Okay, Victor. After I'm not even gonna. How? Let's start with this. How worried were you? I don't want to do this. It's too early. What was your mindset after game one? Because I always want to really know what everybody's thinking around summer league time, where these prospects kind of get started. I didn't want to overreact. Obviously, that's what we were thinking was don't overreact to anything at all. It's not worth overreacting, obviously, given how he's playing right now. But what was your mindset after game one with Wemby?
I didn't want to overreact and be like, some ignorant people online that were like, he's a bust already. Like, I think at that point you're just trolling, because how can you tell after just one game? I'm pretty sure he was nervous. And I'm pretty sure like he was the number one pick. Most number one picks, they have some type of nerve. It's, some probably worse than others, but I wasn't too worried after his performance, even though it was kind of pedestrian. He did have like 4 or 5 blocks, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, he had some bright spots in his debut. So I wasn't just like, oh, he didn't play well at all. He definitely had some bright spots in that performance.
Yeah. And that's what I think this summer league thing is about for him, right? Like, I think the biggest thing that popped off the charts for me for that first game was how much offense they didn't run. Like, the sets they were running were horrible. Like, even down to tonight, you don't expect anybody to run any advanced offense in a summer league game. Obviously, you're not getting coached by your actual head coach or whatever the case may be. So he didn't look like he was in the best position. Even in that first quarter of this previous game that he played tonight, where he almost had 30, he didn't look like he was in the best positions or whatever. Kind of looked like he didn't know where he was at. He even said that after game one. He was like, I didn't really know what I was doing out there, and you could see it. So that's why I'm not overreacting to anything, because if you're a big guy, it's all about positioning. You don't have as much ball control as a guard. You have less control of where you get the ball. You're sitting there waiting for your guard to make, to find you and everything. In San Antonio, their summer league team doesn't even have a real point guard right now. You know what I mean? So I think that was the biggest issue there, was how, like, is he going to get set up and is he going to get the best shots possible? And, early on, it didn't look like that. And I think that's where the struggling was coming from. But then you look at it a little bit later with the rest of this game. And then once he started getting in rhythm and once he started getting to his spots, obviously he ended up doing what he was able to do. So that was good. I think it was just about him getting to his spots, and that's just what it came down to.
Yeah, he is. Victor is such. I told you this. I think I told you this on Friday night or whatever. I said Victor is such a talent. It's kind of hard to fit him into the offense because he can do so many things good. Like, for example, even though he didn't have a good game Friday, but he had a good game today. He has some point guard skills, bro. Like, that's kind of the crazy thing. Like, I saw him dribble the ball down, do a no-look left-hand pass. Like, that's some point guard stuff. That's some Chris Paul kind of Steph Curry. Like, he has genuine point guard skills. So he has a lot of talent, and it's going to be kind of difficult, but he has the right coach in Greg Popovich to kind of figure it out. But he has so much talent, sometimes you won't know what to do with it.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, that's the biggest thing, is how do you use them, right? Like, do you just put him in pick and pops in there? Like, it was a big mix up today. Like, sometimes they were letting him bring the ball up court and kind of do his thing. Other times it was pick and pop stuff. There were a couple of post touches. That's what you wanted to see. Like I said, it's not about the numbers. It's not about if he was able to score 30, whatever the case may be. It's the variation of stuff. Like I said, he had a couple of turnaround shots. Like, he had like a right-handed hook shot over a defender. He had a turnaround jumper in the paint. Then he had the step back. That was like his first field goal of the game. Then the tough finish around the basket and all that stuff. Then an off the catch three. So like I said, you just got to see that variety in his offensive game. And that's what this is all about. And the defense. Like Carl, you said it when you were projected the stat line in the chat. You said you could see him averaging like 3 or 4 blocks a game. It's going to be tough shooting over him. Like, there are a couple of guards. I think the biggest worrying point about him defensively is the pick and roll defense and the switch defense. There are a couple of times where he was switched on to somebody on the perimeter, and it's a summer league, right? These aren't all-star guards, but a couple of them, after getting guarded by him a few times out there on the perimeter, were like, I'm not going to shoot this over him. So you can kind of see that impact he made all around. So it's less about the stats and more about the different ways you can use them, like you just said.
Yeah. I don't know. This dude was 3 or 4 feet like behind the 3-point line that somebody else was about to shoot, and he still blocked the shot. That's crazy to me. Yeah, like, man. He would be bagging off of him, and then he'll lunge at you at the last minute and still block the shot, or at least get it tipped or whatever. So I can definitely see him, even though these are summer league players and they obviously aren't as good as the pro players. I can definitely see him averaging 3 or 4 blocks.
Yeah. Blake, what was after that first game? And like I said, struggled, but I think it was less about him and more about just positioning. What was your mindset after game one, and then coming into this one?
I think after game one, especially like when we were watching some of the things we talked about, I know Carl mentioned it earlier, but the team he's playing with, like, this isn't like a legit, I wouldn't say legit team, but it doesn't have a true point guard. Yep. So a lot of them, he's not going to get a lot of those looks that he's probably going to get in a regular season, which kind of kind of contributed to how he looked in the first game. Also, I know Ty, you were also talking about how tough it is just to plug in right now, since he can pretty much almost do anything, which is a good problem to have.
Yeah.
But I know what I like seeing this game at least was he was playing on the perimeter a little bit more. He looked a lot more comfortable, especially shooting the ball, handling the ball. So I think going forward, I think just finding out that real niche spot for him is going to be important. I think like once he finds that, he'll be all right.
Yeah. Carl, you mentioned it too. You say it's a lot. These guys are human, right? The nerves. Like, the other thing about what people were saying about him coming in is if he ends up becoming Anthony Davis or Kevin Durant, then that's a disappointment. Like, if someone's saying that about you as a player, and like, again, some of these expectations may be too unrealistic, and then we can get into the conversation of, there's an interesting conversation you can get out of this, but I really think you can hype a guy up if he's a top prospect like this, obviously 7'3" with guard skills and everything, but there's a limit to it, right? Like some of the stuff people are saying, to expect a guy to, if you're not the greatest player of all time, then your career is a disappointment, I think is ridiculous. And so, like I said, the amount of pressure on him it's LeBron-like. Like Zion had a lot of pressure, but Zion wasn't hearing stuff like, if you end up being like Kevin Durant or Anthony Davis, your career is a disappointment. Like, both of those guys are champions, superstar players. You know what I mean? Like, you're saying that people are saying that's your floor. So like, again, a lot of it's nerves. You can see it. There were a couple of there's an airball 3 he had. Like, a lot of it just came down to nerves. You know, like I said, you're talking about a guy who's 19, 20? What is he, 19 or 20 or something like that?
No, he's definitely not any older than 20. So
yeah, and all that pressure on him, like everything's not gonna look pretty in the summer league. But as long as he's showing those flashes, and he showed more than just flashes today, but as long as he's showing those flashes from a general standpoint, that's all you want to know. And so once he gets back under Greg Popovich and actually gets an offense running for him and everything, and gets around a real point guard like Trey Jones, who's still developing and all of that, once he's in that situation, everything's going to look a lot better, and it's going to come, together. Maybe not even just his first year, but like I said, things are going to look a lot better than what we've seen already, and things are already looking pretty good.
Yeah.
So.
He is 19. He's going to start the season as a 19-year-old. He's not going to turn 20 until January 4th or whatever. So he's going to be a teenager, basically playing half the season. He's going to be a teenager. That's crazy, and he kind of showed some bright spots in the game he had today. Like, I think another thing that people forget, he is like 19.
You're right.
But he's 19, but he's still a teenager by technical terms. This is a teenager.
Yeah.
And we were putting all this pressure on. So that's why people compare it to LeBron, because we never seen anything, a hyper surround a player like this at that age. So, but he definitely, I think, my personal opinion, I think he's going to live up to it, because it's so many things that I can see that he does well. Like, even before the summer league, I knew he had a little bit of point guard skills, but I'm gonna go back to this. He has, like, I feel like he can legit, I told you this on Friday, I was like, he can legit play every position except the one. I honestly believe that.
And maybe one day he can run the one.
And maybe one day he can play the one, because like I said, I didn't know his point guard skills was on his level.
The way he was, especially in that first game, we didn't really see a lot of it, but the way he was handling that ball, I know one possession, he got down into the paint, threw a little no-look shoulder pass to his dude Cutting. The way he can pass and handle the ball, I wouldn't put it past Popovich to at least try.
A 7'4" point guard is a beautiful thing.
Oh yeah. And I texted y'all this too. Even if year one doesn't look great, I don't care, because like I said, this is why it's not good to overreact, because guys are going to this whole Spurs thing right now. Everything is a project. Everything is about development. Popovich signed for another 5 years because he knew it was going to be a process. So even if it's not figured out after year one, like we're talking about people overhyping summer league stuff, I think people overhype the rookie season. I don't even call a guy a bust after year two. You know what I'm saying? Because even that, there's so much to learn through, and there's so much to work through. So like I said, my thing with him is, as long as he's continuing to show those flashes, that's what you need. Sometimes it may not all come together until maybe year 3 or year 4. I don't mean you can't be a great player. I'm going to use an example. And Carl, you're not going to like this. But
I know you're going to use. And
it's not, they're not the same player at all, right? But they're both highly touted prospects, or whatever the case may be, both looked at as the next saviors for their franchise. Lonzo Ball. Like, his first 2 or 3 years, he didn't do anything but show great flashes and everything like that. And he didn't really put it all together until the Chicago Bulls thing, and he's still polishing that off, and he's hurt. But sometimes that whole process can take a few years, and as fans, we got to be patient through that. It may not be 2 years and he's got it all figued out. You feel me?
Yeah.
I'll say with Lonzo, wouldn't say overhyped, but they place too much hype.
True.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like.
And they put a target on his. They put a target on his back around the league too. Like a target on that dude's back,
which isn't fair on his point. He's honest, and even going to college, but in those first couple of years in LA, he was a decent player.
Yeah,
he wasn't as bad as people made him out to be. It was some of the circumstances. I'm not gonna get into, but some of the circumstances.
Even there were a lot of monkey wrenches thrown in his developmental path. So like year 2, you're playing with LeBron, so you're kind of like, okay, all that playmaking shit you were doing before, you can, you know what I mean? You got to share it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I think that was the worst. That was the worst thing that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually wasn't even going to compare Victor to Lonzo's situation. I was going to compare it to Kobe's because Kobe didn't become Kobe right away. It took him like 3 or 4 years and maybe a little bit more because he had certain players in his spot or whatever the case may be. So it took him a little bit longer to develop than people probably would have wanted, especially Laker fans. But look what he became. So sometimes it's about patience. You can't call a player a bust after 1 year. Sometimes you can't even call him a bust after 2 years.
I agree with that. Like that's my whole thing. Like let's say summer league thing looks ugly, right? Okay. Let's say year 1 looks ugly. Okay. Like I don't care. Like it's all about development. This is a guy who has a lot to work on from a physical standpoint. You know, he has to bring his game together. I think he's got a lot of skill, but he's still raw. There's not a lot of stuff he's super polished in, maybe outside of shooting or whatever the case may be. It's gonna take a minute for him to put that stuff together. So like I said, even if year 1 doesn't go well, who cares? That don't mean this dude still can't get it. But what fans are gonna do is, you know how they gonna be. I can't even.
What they gonna do?
I don't even know what I was gonna say. You know,
I think they're gonna be like, "Oh,
the NBA for a while." You kind of learn that fans 3 things: they ignorant, they impatient, and they like to complain about everything.
I thought you were gonna have another eye on that third one. You said ignorant. Boy, if you'd have threw that,
I should have.
Yeah.
No, I would have just said ignorant, and ignorant because that's like the main thing.
Yeah, and I am happy that a good amount of what I saw on NBA social media, there was, I mean, like Carl said earlier, if you was criticizing him and saying he's a bust after 1 game, you're clearly a troll. Like I saw enough of, you know, it's 1 game, chill out. Like I saw a good amount of that. So I'm glad that's where we are, because a few years back, it was bad. Like if some first pick or whatever the case may be, God forbid, he only scored like 15 points. Everybody's like, he ain't shit, all of this stuff. So, you know, so it's going to be interesting. But today was really cool because you got to see what he did in a system where he was just kind of just out there, and they're like, all right, let's figure stuff out. There was no real offense run. Blake just said it. There was no real point guard. Malachi Brandon, who I'm a big fan of, was chucking up a bunch of shots. You know what I mean? Yeah. And doing a bunch of who knows what. Yeah. When he gets under that pop system, which is a championship winning system that brought him 4 championships, right? Or I think I maybe 5. Right? Like that. This is arguably the greatest head coach in the history of basketball that you're playing under. And so there's another point there about Wemby has there ever been a number 1 overall pick drafted into a better situation than him?
I don't think so. To be honest with you, I really don't think so. I think that system with the coaching, that culture that's in place, and they already, I know we talked about this, I think like 1 or 2 episodes. Well, the night he got drafted, we talked about this. San Antonio, honestly, with the addition of him, they have a really good team. They're a very young team, but it's still a pretty quality team.
Yeah.
So I think if you combine those 3 things together, I can't really think of nobody else that's really had that good coaching, that good team around, and that good like structure.
Yeah.
I honestly, not in the last like 10, 15 years, I can't really think of nobody.
Yeah, probably not, because Greg Popovich is arguably the best coach of all time. So have most of the, I guess, the best coaches in the league or best coaches in NBA history got the number 1 pick. It's probably not a lot of them to have.
Yeah.
Not a ton. Actually, I think probably Greg Popovich has got the best players in the draft.
Yeah.
And in his terms of being one of the best coaches of all time and getting the best players through the draft. I feel like
they know how to scout over there.
They know how to scout.
They do. They really do. I'm excited. Like I said, today you got to kind of see a lot of great stuff. The 3-point shot. When the nerves go away and when he gets in a real offensive system, right, everything's going to look a lot better. You know, I think the one thing I'm only worried about, it's not even like off the charts, like crazy or anything like that. But the one thing I'm worried about is he going to struggle with physicality? Right. Again, some of that could have been nerves, but there are a couple of times where he, got a rebound, ball slipped out of his hands. He got boxed out pretty easily. Can he get his touches against those more physical defenders? We kind of talked about that a little while ago, where we've seen those shorter, stouter guys get put on those taller dudes and kind of have their way sometimes. Like to the likes of PJ Tucker, teams are going to put those types of guys on, and maybe a little bit taller, but teams are going to try to put those kind of guys on to kind of, push them out of the paint. And then also the defense thing. How well is he going to be when it comes to guarding on shorter dudes, quicker guards who are trained to get their shots off on the perimeter over 7 foot plus guys? Is he going to do well in that area? Because he looked a little bit shaky when he switched on a couple of those shiftier guards. But like I said, it's early, but those are just 2 questions I've got. And again, those aren't even like jump off the chart stuff. From a large perspective, people know, as you both just said, it comes down to getting in the right offensive system and everything like that. And that's just what it's going to come down to. And I think I know that's going to benefit him big time in year 1. So we'll see how it all turns out. But he was hooping tonight big time.
I think probably my 2 biggest concerns would, of course, be the physicality. But I think making sure that they're utilizing his skill set to, the fullest of abilities. Not just, sticking him down in the paint and just say, okay, stay over here. You see what he can do with the ball in his hands. I really, especially this season, like I know it's not guaranteed they're gonna just give him the keys to offense, but especially like coming up with this season, I would really love to see him get a lot of freedom, especially with the ball in his hands. Down on the block and perimeter coming up, maybe bringing the ball up or something. Anything that really gets him that experience with the ball in his hands.
Yeah. I think they will, because they almost don't have a choice, because like last year they were a bad team. The year before that they were just okay. So I feel like they have to kind of go towards Victor, and obviously he's the number 1 pick. Go towards him and kind of see where that could be headed with him, getting the ball in the post or feeding him more, or letting them kind of control the offense to kind of just see what they have. I don't think they have a choice.